Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are around the world, and welcome back to another episode of the HEDRON.TV podcast. My name's Manuel, I'm your host here on the show, and I'm joined once again by the one and only Joshua Bausch from Team Phoenix New Dawn.
Hello again.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine. A little bit tired from work, but I'm happy to be here again.
Okay, very nice. Glad to hear that. And I'm also fine and actually pretty excited because we get to talk about deck building in sealed deck format, because that's the topic we're going to discuss in this episode number 2 of the HEDRON.TV podcast. And I think it's pretty interesting for several reasons, because now we have a new set out, Ravnica Allegiance. So yeah, we're going to play quite a lot of Limited, I think, locally, and also in main big events, because we have a few Magic Fests waiting, up ahead. And the format for the main event of these Magic Fests and the Grand Prix is going to be limited, so sealed deck day one for sure, which means talking about deck building in sealed deck format, makes perfect sense. All right, so first of all, among our listeners, there might be players who are relatively new to the game. Maybe they haven't played sealed deck yet. So Joshua, I would like to ask you a very simple question. What is sealed deck briefly?
So sealed deck in particular is like you receive 6 boosters at the start of the tournament. You open them, and all the cards in these boosters are your pool, and you can build the deck out of these cards you received. So there is no changing cards between players or bringing your own cards. You receive 6 boosters, and these are the cards you play with.
All right, so you will receive these boosters, and you have to build a deck, from scratch.
Yes.
Improvise from a certain point of view, let's say.
Yes.
We should mention that in competitive events, it's important to know that you will be given boosters, but what happens actually is that you will be seated, because there's going to be seatings first.
Exactly. There's a procedure before the tournament starts. You receive your boosters, and there are always judges calling out what you have to do. So you don't need to know in particular what to do, but being prepared to know what you should do or will do in the next couple of minutes when you sit down there is always helpful. Normally it starts with one side opening the boosters and showing the content of the boosters to the people in front of you.
Yeah.
He will look through all the cards, put them aside, open the next booster until every booster is opened. Then they put the cards in a single pile. Then the other side starts opening them boosters, show it to the guy in front of them, and does the same thing. Then the judge will announce that you and the person in front of you will change our deck lists and pools, and write on the deck list, play a registering deck. That means that you register the cards that that the guy in front of you opened, so that we don't bring our own cards or have some card manipulation.
Sure.
Because normally the person in front of you don't know. There are some occasions where you maybe know your opponent, but you will always have to be the fair player and don't mess with any competitive pools.
Yeah, this is done to make things very clear.
Yes, they changed it before. There was some kind of randomness to it, to receiving a sealed pool, but there was some sets with more expensive cards in it, and when you open them, you wanted to keep them, so that forced some people to drop out of the tournament to keep the cards. They changed it now, so everything you opened, it's yours at the end.
Okay.
So when you registered all the cards, you have a procedure of sorting it by colors, like the magic colors, first white, blue, black, red, and green. Then you have like lands, artifacts, multicolor cards. And we'll always sort them by name, or as you say, collector's number. You will write the numbers of cards. Maybe they have 2 of this kind of cards. You write on the deck list 2. Then the next card they have 1, the next card they have 1, and so on until you registered all of the cards that are in the pool. Normally there are 90 cards. Yeah, when you're done, the judge will call then again to give the pools back to the original owner, and after everyone is at the same pace, then everyone gave back the pool, will then have a 30-minute deck building time where you start building your deck until you have to finally send in the deck list to the judge.
Yeah, that's an important part as well. I mean, you get your pool back, and that is the time in which you have these 30 minutes and you can actually build your deck.
Yes.
You not only have to build your deck, you have actually to write down your list. So you have a main configuration that is always the same, and every time you play around in game one, your deck has to match that registration thing.
Exactly. You have to give the deck list at the end of the deck building time to the judge, and you have to have a configuration of mostly 23 spells and 17 lands. That's the normal kind of adjustments you have in limited play.
The usual balance between spells and lands.
Yes.
That's the way.
Depends on maybe sometimes you have like 18 lands, sometimes you have 16 lands, but if in general you will play 17 lands.
All right. Very good. I think we explained pretty well what to expect when you attend a competitive event in which sealed deck is the format you're going to play. So let's say that you are there, Grand Prix, the registration process is done, the person in front of you did already all the work, the registration, you get your pool back. And if the person in front of you was diligent, the cards are already also sorted by color.
Yes.
So part of the sorting has been already, taken care of. What do you do there? How do you proceed? How do you select cards? How do you start actually sorting cards out what's your method, let's say?
My personal method is I will put out all the 6 rares. Normally there are, because you receive 6 boosters, you have 6 rare mythic cards in your pool. Normally sometimes you have a foil, then you have a 7th or even an 8th one if you're lucky enough. Pull them out because these are the cards that are normally the most powerful, because that's why they have the higher rarity status. And I will look if there is a card that I really want to play, or that's card that's hard to beat, or it's like so powerful enough that you try to go into that direction of that color. And then I will just lay it in front of me. The second I do is I look through every color and sort the unplayables, all the cards I don't want to main deck out. There are some specific cards, for example, like enchantment or artifact removal, you normally don't want to main deck. That's why you put it in the unplayable pile at first, but because you don't want to main deck this card because it's a specific effect you don't have on a global field, because you face many different archetypes or cards and sometimes need this effect, but usually you don't.
This is like you make a pile of cards that you will never play, you just don't want to play these cards, but also cards that could be considered sideboard cards from a certain point of view.
Yeah, and what I do, I will have this kind of pile at the same thing.
Okay.
I will come to this later to just have to look at which cards you specifically want again, or maybe take in consideration to sideboard in.
Okay.
But first I will the cards I don't want to main deck.
Okay.
These are just the cards I don't want to main deck.
You don't want to main deck, but it doesn't mean that they are totally unplayable. It's just that at the moment you don't want to have them in your main deck configuration.
There's a mix of everything. There are cards that are unplayable. We can talk about some later, or the effects you don't want to.
Sure.
And there are cards like you don't want to main deck because there are too situational.
Yeah, too specific.
Yes.
For certain specific matchups or situations. Okay, understood.
When I sort all these cards out, then I will look through the colors again. There have to be a reason for me to play the specific color. There are some different kind of cards you want to mention. There are bombs, removal, flying or evasion stuff, card advantage, and want to look at cards like this. Removal is always, you want to handle your opponent good cards. You need to have answers for their bombs, for example. If they have an unanswered bomb, it usually wins the game. So you have to look through all your colors to find removal. I I personally don't like to play a deck in sealed deck without removal.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to because you don't open any removal. That's the kind of randomness that a sealed deck comes with.
Sure.
But normally you will find at least like 1, 2, 3 removal spells or removal cards in your pool, and sometimes you have to adjust, splash it if you have to, or be in the color that's already in. If I found my reasons for a specific color, I will just lay the cards I want to play this color for in front of me with the other cards just in a normal pile, and look again at my bombs, and then I will look at my mana.
Okay.
Because the mana determines if I can splash a specific color, if I can, if I can get a little bit greedier, because sometimes there are many land cards in a specific format, but sometimes they don't. So I will look at mana fixing. For example, green is a color that always has a lot of mana fixing. If there are very good green cards, but also a lot of mana fixing, I can go into a lot of more colors and try to play more of my bombs in the other colors when they're not in green, for example.
So one of the steps is actually somehow analyzing your pool so that you understand that you can actually play more cards from different colors because you have the tools to make it happen. And this could be because of a color like green gives you the tools, or because we are talking about sealed deck with a certain specific set. Could be like Ravnica Allegiance, for instance, because the guilds, give you the gates, give you the shock lands, and that allows you to actually have, more color flexibility from a certain point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Ravnica Allegiance, for example, is a guild-based set, and therefore you have always a guild gate in your pool, in one of the boosters.
Yeah.
So in total, you have a minimum of 6 dual lands, for example. So there's a way to splash cards, even if they're just a single color of a specific splash color. Because double colors even with some lands, can get hard to splash.
Yeah. But other sets are conceived in a different manner. Maybe you don't have these lands that can help you out. So unless you have spells that help you out, your, let's say, possibilities are a little bit limited, in the sense that you have to stick maybe to only 2 colors because no more than 2 are possible. So this is one thing that you have to pay attention to.
Exactly. There's an example for something like this. There was a format called, the format was Battle for Zendikar.
Yes.
There was a colorless meta theme, so colorless mana was introduced in that time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of colorless meta cards. So for example, you need to activate this ability with colorless mana. So there is no like fixed land in your booster pack like the guild gets now in Ravnica Allegiance. So if you have all the meta cards but don't have a card that produces colorless mana, you can't activate them, or they lose value in their effectiveness.
Yeah, you need it in your pool, a land that produces specifically colorless with that symbol, like I think it's called simply Wastes.
Yes.
The basic land that produces colorless, or an artifact that produces colorless mana.
Exactly. And therefore you have to read your, sometimes you get the tools from the set, sometimes you don't, and you have to adjust.
Okay. When you build your deck, you have a look at the rares. You see, if you have like creatures with evasive abilities, flying is the first one that comes to mind, but there are others as well. Or very, very strong spells that could more or less win the game on their own. Sometimes even like enchantments that have like strong ability to get you strong advantages, and you win. Eventually, you win the game. If you manage to stabilize, then you win the game. Once you found these in your pool, what do you do? Do you directly build a deck around those cards, or is there more checking involved to understand if you can actually use these cards in your deck?
As if I have a very, very strong card, you normally always want to play, you search the reason at first for it. Because that's, if you play this card, it normally wins the game when it sticks. But I will not force myself just to play, just focus my deck around this specific card. I will not play like 5 almost unplayable cards or not main deckable cards, just to force me into this just one card. Because there are games you draw your bomb and win the game because of that, but there are even more games you don't draw the card. And if you don't draw the card, your deck is under average. And so you get matched up against average base decks and you will still lose, even if you have this one bomb card in your pool or in your deck. But if you don't draw it, it don't have an effect on the game. So can't help you then.
Yeah, so you need to have a deck that works even if you don't draw your bombs.
Exactly.
It has to be, let's say, not bomb dependent from a certain point of view.
Yes.
How do you achieve that?
You have to look into your specific most of them common cards, because most of the cards you have are commons. So how the booster structure works is like you have 1 rare mythic, 3 uncommons, and the rest are common cards in your booster. Sometimes you have a foil card that can be either rarity of it, and it replaces a common card out of your booster. But most of the time you have like 10 plus common cards in a booster, so the most of your cards are common cards. Even though these are just synergistic, sometimes like base stats cards. If we take a reference, in old school cards, you have like a 2 mana, 2/2, it's called the beer.
Yeah. That's from the Grizzly Bear, the first
Exactly.
ever creature, the
Exactly.
vanilla creature. 1 colorless, 1 green, 2 power, 2 toughness, nothing else.
That's it. Exactly. You have to look at some cards of this, and it has to do more than just being a 2/2 for 2.
So you're looking for creatures that do also things.
Exactly.
They're not just permanents on the battlefield, but they have an activated ability or maybe just a static ability that works somehow towards a specific game plan, maybe, or just has good synergies.
Exactly. If they are overstated, for example, if I can play a 3/3 for 2 mana,
Yeah.
that's way better than a 2/2 for 2 mana. So
Sure.
that is already a bonus. So these are some cards I look for to improve my deck with. For example, there's the Sorrowform hybrid.
Yeah.
It's a 2 mana 2/2, but it had also the keyword adapt from the newest set, Ravnica Allegiance. That means if this creature doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, you can pay a specific amount of mana, in this case 4 and green, to put 4 +1/+1 counter on this card.
Yeah.
Now that's a bear that also have a late game impact in becoming a 6/6 for 8 mana. Kind of spent on 2 by casting it, and 6 later on investing it. That's a kind of effect I want to have in limited.
Okay.
Because it does something at every stage in the game.
Yeah, you draw it in the early game, you can play it.
Exactly.
And if you draw it later in the game, you still have a benefit from the card.
Exactly. Imagine just having a bear. Like your opponent has like 4 5s or 3 4s, and you just draw a 2/2.
Yeah.
This card doesn't interact with. If you don't have like 8 of these 2/2s, you can't really interact or block these bigger creatures.
Okay, so it's important to have actually creatures that do things.
Yes.
It's also important probably to be familiar with specific themes. You need to know the set. You need to know how creatures of a certain color can interact with each other, the synergies, this kind of thing. So I guess you need also to prepare a little bit ahead to make sure that you actually can maximize the chances to build the best deck that you can with the pool that you're given. But what about the curve? What's your approach in making sure that your game plan unfolds smoothly because you are actually in curve?
Because how Magic works, you can always play 1 land at 1 turn, but sometimes you play more lands because of specific effects allows you to do so. But it's better to have more cards that are cheaper than cards that are most expensive, even though the most expensive ones are more powerful than the cheaper ones, because that's how like a money system works. If you pay more for a specific effect, it's normally much more stronger.
Sure, more powerful.
More powerful than the the cheaper costly card. But also, if you draw more expensive cards, you don't do anything in the early game. And if your opponent just plays random creatures and can just reduce your life total to 0, even if you have like 6 cards in hand, and they all cost 5+ mana, but you don't have 5+ mana in play, you did nothing. So
Sure.
even these more powerful cards, even if you can say, oh, but my cards are more powerful, if they don't do anything, they're not powerful at all.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I get it. So how do you make sure actually that this doesn't happen to you? What are the proportions? What's the balance that you're looking for?
I always look for, in my opinion, I always look like to 3 to 4 2-drops. Then don't overextend the 3-drop base by too much. Normally, at this kind of age, 3-drops are more the middle kind of cards that you have more 3-drops than anything else. 4-drops I don't want to go usually over 4 because then it gets too clumped up.
Okay.
And because if you have not mana acceleration cards, if you have mana accelerating cards, you can discuss or can make adjustments about your curve. But normally I don't want to go more than that. But we are just talking about the creatures at the moment.
Yeah.
And then I would like to have 2 to 3, like 5 drops ish cards. I will ish cards because I will take in consideration the 5+ mana cards as well, like a 6 or 7 drop. I don't want to go over the top with them, but will take in consideration I want to have like 14ish, a little bit more, but the lowest minimum are 14 creature cards in my deck at the end of the deck
so
station.
basically, it's like 80% of the deck, even more than that, is going to be made of creatures, and the rest is going to be a few key spells.
Exactly.
Okay.
There are some teams or strategies in some formats that are instant or sorcery based, but normally because of the randomness of the boosters, you will have a lot more creatures than instant or sorceries. You can count instant or sorcery spells that make tokens.
Sure.
For example, a 3 mana make a 3/3 token creatures.
Yeah.
You can just put it into the creature pile because it's basically a creature. It do a creature when you cast it.
Okay, so that for you is a creature spell. If it's not a creature spell, counts as a creature spell.
I will count it as an instant or sorcery if I have instant or sorcery meta cards. For example, get an instant or sorcery back from a graveyard. Then I will count these cards and make this specific card effect playable. But those are specific cards, but in general, these kind of cards are creature cards, in my opinion.
Okay, and the non-creature spells, most of the time, are probably removals?
Yes, removals, card draw.
Yeah, card draw. How much do you value combat tricks?
There are specific formats, and then combat tricks are really good. If there is not much removal in the format, sometimes there is less or higher rarity removal. Combat tricks get a lot better.
Okay.
For example, if you have a set with the base and toughness of most of the creature are identical, even the +1/+1 combat tricks get very good.
Okay.
Because then your creature wins the fight against the opponent creature. Then you can look into the sum of effects draws a card, and they're even better than that. But I wouldn't go too high on aura enchantments or combat removal. They enable 2-for-1 trades for your opponent.
Yeah.
What I mean with that is that if you play a combat trick and your opponent plays a removal spell in response to your combat trick, your creature dies. Also, it does your combat trick.
Sure. You have to be careful with that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that depends, with the combat trick specifically, that depends a little bit on how that specific set actually works, and how limited and how sealed deck works.
There's no general saying about combat tricks.
Okay.
Because it depends on each format you have.
You need to be familiar with the set. You need to know how it plays,
Yes.
And that allows you to understand how vital, how crucial the combat tricks are. If you can just, if you have to prioritize them, for instance, or if you have to leave them as, I don't know,
In general, you can say
fillers, more or less.
in general you can say that combat tricks, you don't want to have that much combat tricks.
Okay.
Because as I mentioned, they enable 2-for-1s, and there are normally enough removal spells in the format that that you have to watch out or can't always play, because then you make a card disadvantage if it goes wrong.
Okay. But removals, of course, you want to have.
Yes.
And also maybe enchantments or maybe big sorcery spells that, generate crazy effects. These are the stuff that you want to have, especially if they could be like finishers or that kind of thing that allows you to close the game. Yeah.
For example, effects that would kill multiple creatures at once.
Yeah.
Draw multiple cards to a reasonable cost. Cards that come back to your hand or have a recursion, synergistic stuff with your deck. For example, if you have creature cards that bring back instant or sorcery cards, and therefore I would put cards in my deck that an effect I want to have in multiple, for example.
Okay. Yeah, sure. When you play a single card and you can, just nullify 3 cards on the battlefield of your opponent, for instance, it's a situation in which you want to be, that's for sure.
Yes.
Very, very good. There is another thing that we can talk about that is a little bit maybe underrated, because we were talking about before, when you were talking about how you sort your cards. You make a pile with the cards that you don't want to main deck.
Yes.
And that suggests me, sideboarding, because sideboarding is something that is not, I think, so much mentioned when people talk about sealed deck in general, but the whole rest of your pool is actually your sideboard. To the point that if you want, you can even present in game 1 a blue-white deck, because this is what you registered in your deck list.
Yes.
And then it could be a blue-green-black after sideboard. You can even go for these radical changes. So the question that I have is, first of all, do you always sideboard? And how do you identify the sideboard cards that you want to bring in?
I would always sideboard in limited, because as we mentioned, we do I do a pile at the start of sorting my cards into the I don't want to main deck pile.
Okay.
You can sort these kind of cards again into unplayables.
Yes.
These are kind of cards that don't have an impact. For example, most of the time it's like destroy a land. Sometimes these kind of cards win a game, but nowadays they are overcosted, and if you play them, your opponent has a lot of lands. If you draw them late,
doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can screw them, but most of the time it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if 1 out of 10 is going to be useful, it doesn't mean that it's going to be always useful. So
Exactly.
That's what
So most of the time it's not a good card. Or cards like you gain 8 life for 3 mana. That's a lot of life, and people say, yeah, but you have you gain 8 life. But sometimes it's not worth a card, because it's card disadvantage. If your opponent has a better board state than you, more creatures or bigger creatures than you, and you play a card that gains you 8 life, it doesn't impact it on the board, and doesn't better your position on the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. You gain a temporary bonus, but if you're behind on the board, you're still behind on the board.
Exactly. And therefore, these are some cards I consider unplayable, and will never put in my deck. Therefore, there are specific cards that I never want to main deck. For example, enchantment removal, artifact removal. These are kind of effects you don't want to main deck, because you can't always guarantee that your opponent has these kind of specific type cards in his deck. Therefore, is it the dead card if you draw it and you can't play it?
Sure.
It's like you never drew a card, and that's like worse than even drawing a land, because a land you can put into play and do something with it.
Yeah.
Therefore, I will always board them in if I see enough targets for this specific card. For example, enchantment removal. If my opponent has like 3 cards, 3 pacifismus effects, these are enchantment cards that are placed on the opponent creatures, and they can't attack or block anymore. So basically, they're useless.
Yeah, they're usually white.
Yes, they're
Most of
usually
the
white.
time, or white-blue. That depends a little bit on the set, but yeah.
Yes, these kind of cards are like kind of removal, but you can counter them with enchantment removal.
Sure.
Because you can just remove the enchantment and then there your creature is free again and can do whatever it likes again. If I see enough of these kind of effects, I bought enchantment removal in. Just because you see one pacifismus effect or pour one enchantment on your opponent, it isn't always right to just board these kind of effects in. Because if they just have one of these kind of card, you need to come in the situation that he needs to have this one specific card and you have to this one specific card. If you have the enchantment removal and he doesn't have the enchantment, we're in the same scenario. You have a dead card on your hand and can't play it or use it in any effect. But if my opponent has a bombish enchantment, if we go back to Ravnica Allegiance, there is this kind of enchantment in the set. It's called Ethereal Absolution.
Yeah. That is very strong.
That
wins the game on its own.
Exactly.
We're talking about, I think it's like 4 colorless, 1 black, one white. Creatures your opponent control gets -1/-1.
Exactly.
Creatures you control get +1/+1.
Exactly.
And then has an activated ability as well. 2 colorless, 1 black, 1 white. You can exile a creature from your opponent's graveyard, if I remember correctly, and put a spirit token, white spirit with flying.
Exactly, a 1/1 spirit token.
Yeah.
Basically, it makes for 4 mana, makes a 2/2 flyer out of
Sure.
Because it says it says in play.
And when you have a couple of tokens, the race is
Yes,
real.
that's like a free. It's like a card that does something when you play it because of the -1 +1 stats difference.
Yeah.
It does. It also has an activated ability. So you have every turn you have something to do as long as you have targets in the opponent's graveyard for it. Therefore, if I see something like this, even then I would board enchantment removal. Because if I don't handle this specific card, I just lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I wouldn't just board enchantment removal just for one random enchantment, but for a card with an win game effect.
Yeah. So if your opponent has a card that is like the impact is so high, you need to have an answer in your deck, even if it's just one copy. But generally speaking, for singular enchantments, you would consider it. You would think about it twice before actually boarding specific hate cards. What about creatures with evasive abilities like flying? This comes to mind because you have very often in sets, especially in green color, hate cards against flying creatures. Sorcery or instant speed cards that say destroy target flying creature. Yes. Or creature with flying. I don't know the exact wording.
Sometimes you can have the biggest creatures on the battlefield, but if your opponent is tempo-wise ahead, that means had a better start, had higher life totals, can also beat you down faster than you can, but you have no way of blocking because the opponent creature has an evasive ability. For example, as mentioned, flying. You can't really handle it because you can't block it or don't have a removal for it. So you have to adjust your deck as well. So, for example, you can take out any creature, for example, the same converted mana cost, for a card you don't have in your main deck. It doesn't mean that's a bad card. We have, for example, there is a card in Ravnica Allegiance. It's a 5 mana 3/5 with reach called Mammoth Spider.
Yeah. 4 colorless, 1 green. I think the casting cost is.
That's a solid creature card, but it doesn't mean you always play it in every deck because there maybe you have some better 5-drops or other cards you want to play, and therefore it doesn't make the cut at the end of the deck registration.
Yeah.
But you need to always keep in mind that these cards exist in your pool. And if you see problematic flyers and can't deal with them, you have to board cards like this in.
Yeah, this is a fine sideboard card.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have better creature cards on the same mana cost, but you have to rethink, are they even better in this kind of situations? If I'm not ahead, do I win the game with this kind of card, even if it's better than the Mammoth Spider? Matchup dependent. The Mammoth Spider can gain more value and have a more in-play use than any other card in your deck.
Okay, so it's important to do this kind of evaluation
Exactly.
to understand what you actually need for that specific matchup. And if in that case, if what you need is handling the flying threats of your opponent, then you want to board this card in the example of, we were talking about the Mammoth Spider. But generally speaking, you want to exchange cards, and even if you have a creature that generally speaking could be better in that specific matchup, you need to handle those threats. So
Yes.
you want to have the sideboard card in.
Yes. In general, you try to have your deck built against the global field, but you need to always adjust in every specific round, because people try to use specific strategies, try to be synergistic, and you always want to disrupt it. And not the best creature sometimes, or most of the time, are the most disruptive tools you have, but sideboard cards like Mammoth Spider or something else. There are always a use for a card in your sideboard in specific matchups.
Okay, those cards that are playable but have like very specific effects or target very specific cards. So it's important actually to have a look at those and keep those in mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. Probably this is an aspect that I said before. It's a bit underrated, but it's very important actually, especially in competitive play, because these cards can save the day in the end.
Exactly.
In certain specific matchups. I was mentioning before that your sideboard pool is actually what's left of your deck once you decided how to build your deck. Everything else, it's actually your sideboard. And the possibility of actually change color and put in a color that is not in your main deck configuration. Is it something you do often? Is it something that you recommend, or is it dependent on specific sets? How do you see this?
If we do the same enchantment-based example from before, if your opponent have an enchantment bomb you want to handle, or a lot of specific enchantment cards, you want to get rid of, you sometimes can add a color or change a color, because not every color has an answer to everything.
Sure.
For example, red doesn't have enchantment removal. It has artifact removal, or it's damage-based removal. Therefore, it's known for, but no enchantment removal. So you have to rely on other cards. For example, green that has a lot of enchantment removal. You can splash it if you have the tools to, or change the color completely. I see sealed decks that play on game one have an aggressive red-white deck with a lot of 1 and 2 drops and damage-based spells. And after game one, they change their completely to a blue-black deck.
Okay.
Control deck.
Okay.
So if you have enough playables, enough tools, you can even build 2 decks out of your seal pool, and can switch strategies after sideboard. But you always have to start with the cards you registered at first.
Yeah, sure. Is this a strategy that can pay off? Do this kind of radical shift between main deck and post sideboard deck, let's say?
Yes, if your opponent didn't pay attention.
Okay.
If your opponents pay attention, then it sometimes can't pay off.
Okay.
Because when they're not paying attention, they will just look at their own cards and see, and they want to sideboard against aggressive cards. So they take their normally when their sideboards against aggressive strategies, they take their most expensive spells out. So as we mentioned, most expensive spells mostly have a bigger impact on the game, but are coming later into play because of their amount of mana they cost, and put in more cheap cards, like cards that have a lot of toughness, less strength, less power, because they block better against this army of small creatures that's coming out of an aggressive deck. Therefore, if you then board into a more late game based strategy, they have these useless cards in their deck.
Sure.
So if they draw them, like we mentioned, if they draw a card that doesn't match well with the board or doesn't have an impact, it's a useless card. It's a useless card. Therefore, you gain an advantage out of it. And if your opponent didn't pay attention, you did the right thing.
Okay. So it's a strategy that can work, but it doesn't necessarily work. Depends on the amount of attention that your opponent, pays in the end. So is it something you would recommend or that you do, or you usually don't do it?
Most of the time, the pool does give you 2 decks out of.
Okay.
You can build off, but it happens more often than you think it would do. Sometimes you misbuild your pool as well. So always talk to your friends after you registered your pool, and maybe you can figure out and have to adjust your deck after sideboarding as well. So you can always build most of the time a better pool you already built and adjust it.
A better deck, you mean?
Yes. Sometimes there's a better deck in your pool than you registered. So try to make the best of it after round 1. So therefore you can always have the better deck.
That's very important. That's very important because this is an option that you have to keep in mind. As you said, you build your deck and then you understand that it's not the best deck that you could actually get out of your pool. You still have the chance to play with your perfect deck, let's say, consider the pool that you have in game 2, in game 3, and still, let's say, win the round in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
very important to know that.
Therefore, I always recommend talk to your friends, talk to the people you're with. Maybe ask a pro player if he wants to look, or have the time at the moment to look over your deck. Many people are very helpful, and can go 100% into your pool because they have to think about their strategy as well.
Sure.
But most of the time, they will just look over it and
Yeah.
tell you if you have to change
Yeah, but
one
if you're
or two
in a-
cards.
Yeah.
But even just 1 or 2 cards can make a difference.
Yeah. If you are like with your friends or you have your own team, you can ask your teammates and they can help you out. And then you can somehow contain the damage from a certain point of view. So in the first game, your deck is going to be what it is. Nothing you can do about that, but you can have much better deck in game 2 and game 3 and possibly still win the round.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty important. Okay, we were talking about sideboard and we're talking about identifying these sideboard cards. But from what we discussed in this, in this broadcast so far, it's pretty clear that you need to know the set to understand exactly how to build the deck. So that means you need to prepare ahead.
Yes.
There's no way around it. You cannot just show up for an event, know nothing at all about the set, and expect to win easily. Because everybody else is probably very prepared.
Yes.
So you have to be prepared too. So how do you do that? How do you prepare yourself?
Before every new set, you get a sneak peek at every card in the spoiler season. Therefore, you get to know the mechanics. They are also spoiled within this season. If we take Ravnica Legion, for example, there are mechanics better than others.
Yeah, you need to know which one worked best.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Riot mechanic, for example, it's a very powerful one because this creature gets, if you put a +1/+1 counter on them, they normally get oversized. As we mentioned before in how to look at your cards you want to play. You have bears that now can get a counter and are now 3/3 for 2 mana. That's an effect that you want to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Because if you play removal or have removal or want to play around specific cards, you see then that you have the specific effect becomes better or worse. For example, if you have a card effect that does 1 damage to a card or to a creature or a player, you look at the complete set and see that like 30% of the creature cards have 1 toughness. So this kind of specific effect becomes better.
Okay.
Because you normally have like 2 to 4 creatures in your opponent deck that get killed by this card. Therefore, you this card is a main deckable card because it does something most of the time.
Sure. Most of the time, it's going to have a target.
Exactly. Even if there is not one toughness creature, even if the base of the creature stats are like 2/3. If most of the creatures are 2/3s and they fight against each other, they have 2 damage dealt to each other, so therefore are like 1 toughness creatures again. So these cards do something again as well. So you have these kind of effects that you can know have a reasonable effect on the game state if you looked at the set at first and understand, okay, I need more 3/3s or more 2/3s than I need 3/2s or 3/1s, for example, because they die easily. Toughness most of the time matters more than power, even though that power trades better than toughness.
Sure. So basically, you get familiar with the mechanics to understand, to evaluate also other cards.
Yes.
So you evaluate with removals based on how the mechanics work, and see if a removal is really good or not, depending on which mechanics are present in the set in the end.
Exactly.
So familiarizing with the mechanics, evaluating removals and spells in accordance with these mechanics. This is part of your method, let's say, to get familiar with the set, to prepare for a sealed deck event. And what else would you like to add for this preparation process? What else do you analyze? Do you study? Let's say.
I think playing a lot, getting a feel for a card.
Okay, so you want to actually play test.
Yes. I would. There are tools right now, for example, Magic Arena is, I think, the best tool at the moment to play.
MTG Arena, yeah, absolutely.
You get a feel for the cards, to see which cards are better, which are more useful than others. You can have a baseline of saying, okay, these cards, because it's overstated or have a very good effect, are better. That's the cards that look the most obvious. But then there are also cards that doesn't look that obvious that they're good, because they only match that very good in this specific kind of set, and you only learn that by playing with the card. Therefore, the best way to prepare for such an event is play as much as you can.
Okay, so play as much sealed events online that you can, or even on paper once a set is released in your store, or I don't know, maybe you just assemble a team of people and you buy a box or a couple of boxes all together and you just do sealed. And in this way, you familiarize with the cards, with the interactions you can analyze. Do you have a very specific method of testing, or you just build your pool and play and see what happens?
It's we discuss a lot, so we compare cards with each other. As we mentioned earlier in this podcast, we're like, you want to know what the set is like and want to look the base stats or card that match very well, removal match very well against the creatures there are in the set. For example, if there are 3 toughness creatures, is this 5 mana -3/-3 worth it to play? And then we play with it, because that's normally a card you have in your pool, and you play with them until you have an result that it's a card you want to play or always want to play, or if you really need a removal spell, this card can do fine, but it's not overwhelming. Yeah, that's a conclusion we will then come to.
Yeah, so, it's your evaluation process, basically.
Yes. Therefore, you always have to play a lot.
At the end of the day, playing a lot, see how cards interact, and understanding which cards are better than others because they perform better during the games.
Yes.
So talking about performing and everything, sometimes you're not so lucky and your pool is not so good.
Exactly.
But you still you somehow need to make this deck work somehow.
Exactly.
So what do you do when your pool is not great?
Most of the time you have an average pool, because that's how the mathematics work. You can't go always have the best cards out of the best set, out of the set, because they're randomized. And therefore you are always there with a with a normal pool, with an average pool, and have to use the average card to win against average cards as well. Therefore, I think there is luck involved in opening the best rare in the set.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Or open an invocation that was in sets before Ravnica
Yeah,
Allegiance.
yeah. In Amonkhet or
Amonkhet and stuff like this. But in the end, I think there is always a way to build up your pool the best out of the cards you got, and that's a skill in it. You have to find it, and therefore, if you practice a lot, you have the tools in you then to always find the best deck out of your 90 cards you get out of the boosters.
So you need to develop this sort of expertise.
Exactly.
Looking at your pool and finding the game plan that is hidden between apostrophes in it, and take it out.
Exactly.
That's more or less the idea.
Yes, that's the idea behind Sealed Deck as well.
Yeah.
Find a treasure in your tools.
Okay, but to be able to analyze, you need to first of all be familiar with the set and also play a lot, because then you see the interaction. So you have a bad pool. You can say it's bad luck, but it's not only about bad luck.
True.
It's also about not having the skill of identifying the winning plan out of the pool that you have.
Sure. Sometimes it's really that you had a bad pool. That happens. Happens to me as well. There was a Sealed Deck tournament, a Team Seal tournament, where we even get 12 boosters, and we couldn't even build a single deck out of these three, out of these pools, because there was a weird configuration of cards that you had amount of cards more often than you usually have, and then you have the bad cards, the kind of unplayables I mentioned earlier, multiple ones, and other sealed pools from other teams had like the best removal, multiple, and even couldn't play them all because there were too many of them.
Sure.
And had them in the sideboard. That's bad luck. So it happens.
Yeah, the luck factor is there.
The luck factor is there.
But it's not the only factor responsible.
Exactly.
I
think if you have an average pool, you can always make day 2 if you play to your extent well enough. Therefore, I wouldn't always say that luck is the only factor you lost.
Okay. Would you say that on average, if your deck is not working, it's your fault, more or less? Because you didn't understand exactly how to build it?
Exactly. I think you can always work on yourself and on your skills, on your magic skills. And if you evolve in them, then you
will succeed in building a decent deck.
Exactly.
That can actually, bring you home in the end and qualify for day 2 of a Grand Prix or getting up to the top in a PTQ qualifier.
Sure, there's always luck involved in Magic because of drawing cards.
Sure.
Drawing the right amount of lands or spells and stuff like this. This is a factor that's it's generated by luck, but you can minimize them by doing great mulligan decisions, doing a good sequencing of your spells, having a good mindset of the cards that in the set to play around specific cards that appear more often than others. Yeah. So there are ways to navigate even through these kind of luck. If you minimize the amount of luck you need, you have a lot more success in Magic.
Okay. So again, you have to be familiar with the set because you need to know what to expect.
Yes.
From your opponent's side. Yeah, absolutely. Last question before we finish. Your impressions about Ravnica Allegiance and Sealed. What kind of sealed format does that look to you?
So far, we had the Guilds of Ravnica beforehand. These are 2 guilds set. That means these sets rely on the guild mechanics, like the guild-based format. That means there are always 2 colors forming a guild. For example, in Ravnica Allegiance, red and green form Gruul.
Yeah.
That means you have more 2-color cards of these specific color combinations. And there are 5 clans in the set, that means you are restricted to these kind of color combinations because of the playable cards in the set. Therefore, you lose the combination of some color combinations and have to focus on making it work with less options.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's a characteristic actually for Ravnica. Do you think it's going to be faster? It's going to be slower compared to Guilds of Ravnica, for instance, or?
I played it a bit on Magic Arena and,
Okay.
and Magic Online. At the moment, don't find it very fast because if you look at there is the spectacle mechanic that is very slow and the riot mechanic that can give haste. But I think in limited, the riot mechanic gives more +1/+1 counter than giving haste. And the spectacle mechanic is not so cheap as you hope sometimes for. Sure, there are some spectacle cards that cost just 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But many abilities cost like 3 to 5. So I think you have to invest a lot of mana, even though the Simic, the Adept mechanic, that's a very slow board or value generating mechanic. That means you have to invest a lot of mana into it. So I would say that's a more slower, mid-rangey format than even an Acro format we had.
Okay, so you expect it to be a little bit slower
Yes.
than before.
At the moment, yes.
More on the mid-range and late game. At least this is the impression you have.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. It's time to wrap this episode up. So thank you very much, Joshua, for joining me here once again.
It was a pleasure.
My pleasure, absolutely, because we talked about lots of things and we went, I think, deep enough to, provide good information for those who are relatively new to Sealed Deck and also maybe who played already Sealed but would like to hone their skills and, get even better results. Okay, so thank you very much once again, Joshua.
Thank you as well.
And a big thank you to all of you, dear viewers and listeners, for staying with us. It's really appreciated. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you want to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, you find the links in the description of this video or this podcast on SoundCloud, depends on where you are. And what you can also find in the description is the link to Joshua's Twitter profile if you want to interact directly with him, ask questions, and so on. Thank you again for staying with us. Stay tuned on HEDRON.TV for more content to come. And for now, it's goodbye.